Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thursday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national. Here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Happy to be with you and looking forward to taking your calls on open phones across America. That's the final couple of segments of each hour of the show. And I want to recap what's going on today, right? America's still reeling from this horrific accident last night. I'm seeing reports of 65 people killed, 67 people killed. As far as I know, the passenger manifest has not been released as of yet. And, you know, there are people that lead with compassion. There are people that lead with conspiracy. There are people that lead with blame. And there's no shortage of that out there. I don't know what I'm leading with yet. I'm curious about everything. I want to blame somebody. I think many of us do. And President Trump kind of weighed in on this earlier today, explaining what he thought was the cause of it. Listen to this.
A week before I entered office, they put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program. Then another article, the Federal Aviation Administration, this was before I got to office, recently, second term. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine? These are people that are, actually their lives are shortened because of the stress that they have. Brilliant people have to be in those positions, and their lives are actually shortened, very substantially shortened because of the stress, where you have many, many planes coming into one target, and you need a very special talent and a very special genius to be able to do it.
And he's claiming that it is DEI. And listen, I think I said this on the radio last night, right? And I don't know if it's DEI at the FAA, DEI in the military, but the hiring in our government under the last 3 to 4 years with the Biden folks has been horrible. And we've seen it. We've seen men with beards wearing dresses that are in charge of the nuclear agency. And I know somebody out there saying, but listen, Rich, just because he's a man with a beard wearing a dress doesn't mean he's not capable. No, it doesn't. But what it does mean is that we are prioritizing his beard-wearing, dress-wearing fetishes over his qualifications, right? Dr. Richard Levine, now Rachel Levine, we prioritized his transition over his qualifications. Now, maybe because he was Pennsylvania's health secretary or health commissioner, he might be a good fit for this job. But it's clear to me that the emphasis was always on race or gender. It's what it's been all along. We've seen it time and again, with Biden saying, I'm going to pick a black woman as my vice president. When it was time for the Supreme Court, I'm going to pick a black woman. Right? It was never, I'm going to pick the best person for the job. We've seen it time and again. So I think Trump is right when he says you don't need a special genius to figure out that this is DEI. Right? You do need talented people to do this. And it's horrible that it happened. Now, of course, after making that statement, we've got Caitlin Collins from CNN doing the follow-up here, trying to get the emotional response. Listen to this.
We don't even yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed, and you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control and seemingly the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think with the names of the people, you mean the names of the people that are on the plane? You think that's going to make a difference? They are
comfort their families
they are
considering
a
blaming
group of
DEI
people that have
policies?
lost their lives. If you want a list of the names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. We're in coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question. I'm surprised coming from you.
I love a little old Trumpism right there. Good for him. Right? You got to push back because it creates, when you hold people accountable, whatever that looks like. In this situation, it's a reporter who can view this many ways, right? The reporter can be like, oh, Trump, what a jerk. That guy's such a jerk. He's such an egomaniac. He's whatever. Or you could view it as, you know what? I don't want to look like I'm asking weak questions or questions that are inappropriate. And again, take it how you want. So maybe I'm going to ask a better question. One I think I can get an answer from so that, or one that I think needs to be asked. And even if he dodges it, then at least, I'm on the record asking it. I don't think, what did she think he was going to do? Say, all right, sure, hold on. Let me pull out my paper right here and start reading off the names. And I think that's why he was saying it wasn't smart. Wasn't the time or place for that? At some point, probably in print, if the families want to do that. But usually families want privacy, right? How many times have you seen people post, oh, so-and-so died, in lieu of flowers? They don't want flowers, and they don't want you bombarding them. They want you to come, say your respects. Matter of fact, I see less and less viewings when people are dying. Anyway, different story, different segment, perhaps. Point is, I'm glad Trump decided to check her. I think we need more of that in Washington. It needs to become the norm that, if you ask these silly questions, we're not going to start to shrivel and squirm around. Like, oh, my gosh, what if I say the wrong thing to Caitlin Collins? No. It's more like I'm going to say what I say, and that's how it's going to be. And I think we need more of that. There's been too much pomp, too much circumstance, too much polish in our politics. We glorified bipartisanship, and I'm not trying to glorify tribalism or polarization, but I am going to say if you've got one political party that believes that men should be women, women should be men, children should be whatever they want, and one that believes men are men, women are women, and kids are kids and should be left alone. In my opinion, this is a right versus wrong dichotomy. And you've got to go with the people that are right, because going with the people that are wrong could be detrimental for everybody, whether it's in the military, whether it's in aviation, whether it's at the FAA or anywhere else, including the FBI. And that was something else that went down today. Tulsi Gabbard taking the stand today with the hearing into her nomination as DNI. Kash Patel also giving his testimony in the confirmation hearing, or I should say answering questions. And very, very interesting stuff. Of course, they're trying to go after Kash Patel with everything under the sun. At one point, I think it was Senator Tom Tillis, he's been on a roll, pulling out a sheet of paper with the likely objections and mischaracterizations that they were going to use to try and lampoon Patel. And it had things like QAnon and a bunch of other things that I thought were just terrific. Is some of the questions that you may have heard about, is the world safer because of this? Is this safer because of that? And, trying to set him up, put him in these gotcha scenarios. But Kash Patel definitely holding his own. And he was asked about whether or not he would investigate his predecessors at the Department of Justice, Director Wray, James Comey, even Attorney General Barr. Listen to this.
We have heard already your book includes a list of 60 people who you think make up part of the executive branch deep state. Mr. Patel, if confirmed, do you plan to investigate President Trump's former FBI Director Christopher Wray? Yes or no?
I have no plans in going backwards. I have plans in safeguarding.
How about James Comey? Do you plan to investigate him?
Senator, every investigation will be subject to the same legal standard.
Do you plan to investigate James Comey, who's on your list?
I have no intentions of going backwards.
How about Bill Barr?
Intention of using the Constitution.
How about Bill Barr? Do you plan to investigate him, who's on your executive branch deep state, and you say you're going to ferret out the deep state?
No one
Yes or
that
no?
did not break the law will be investigated.
That, again, is Kash Patel with Mazie Hirono going back and forth. And let me check in with the control room. Do I have time to play another clip? Anyone? All right, so I'm going to play one more. And this is the next one in the litany with Kash Patel. Check this one out.
Do you believe in the adage that two wrongs don't make a right, but they do make it even?
Senator, I think if anyone commits a wrong in government service, the American public deserve to know the absolute secular detail of that corrupt activity.
When reforming the FBI and the Justice Department, two wrongs don't make a right, but they do make it even is the wrong approach, isn't it?
That's correct.
And we're going to hold you accountable for that.
I hope you do.
Now, there's some good people at the FBI.
Lots.
And there have been and may still be some bad people there.
All right.
And you've got to find out who the bad people are and get rid of them in accordance with due process and the rule of law. And then you've got to lift up the good people. Don't go over there and burn that place down. Go over there and make it better. Do you commit to us today that you will do that?
I commit to you, if confirmed, Senator, every single day, 24/7, 365, the FBI will be the premier law enforcement agency in the world.
I thought that was a very solid response from Kash Patel. And again, they just kept trying to get him from every angle. And this was probably a more friendly exchange with Republican Senator Kennedy. But interesting to see how it goes. And again, not surprising, honestly. This is what you kind of expect. Not as eye-opening as I think the RFK stuff where, everybody's donations from Big Pharma were put on display. But very interesting and very telling when, the main things they're concerned with are who are you going to investigate? Who are you going to investigate? It's almost like, what do you care? What are you afraid? What are you afraid of? Kash Patel showed a lot of restraint. I would have been a real smart ass had they asked me those questions. But anyway, there is more to come straight ahead. I want to invite you to give us a call. The phone number is 833-482-5337-833-4-Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet. I have no love for Assad or Gaddafi or any dictator. I just hate al-Qaeda. I hate that we have leaders who cozy up to Islamist extremists, minimizing them to so-called rebels. As Jake Sullivan said to Hillary Clinton, quote, al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. Well, Syria is now controlled by an al-Qaeda offshoot, HTS, led by an Islamist jihadist who danced in the streets on 9/11 and who was responsible for the killing of many American service members.
That, of course, is Tulsi Gabbard, former congresswoman from Hawaii, giving her 2 cents in today's confirmation hearing with the United States Senate. And what's interesting about all this is I feel like they're going to continue to give them a difficult time, but I feel good about all of these nominees. But I want to get a second opinion, if you will, and I want to bring in Congressman Byron Donalds from Florida's 19th District. Congressman, welcome.
Hey, how you doing? It's good to be with you.
Sounds good, brother. Amen to that. Now, there's a whole lot going on in Congress. You're looking at Trump's first 100 days, and honestly, he's done so much in this first, 10 days that it's a lot of people are having trouble keeping up. How much pushback, from your perspective, being in Washington, are you sensing from the deep state or from the opposition?
From the deep state, they're just trying to do everything they can. But to be blunt, I mean, the president's come in focused. The team has been ready to go. And so they've just hit all the right buttons in terms of how do you push these ideas? What are you going to actually bring? The speed upon which they've brought all of these orders so that it just makes it so difficult for them meaning the deep state, to respond. And then I think what's also helpful is, if you're a supporter of President Trump, what's helpful is that the Democrats are really in disarray. They don't really know where they want to attack or push back on, so they're kind of a mess. And in the media, they really lost their credibility years ago, but the culmination of that loss of credibility we're seeing right now. So they don't even know really where to respond. So it makes it difficult for the deep staters to really push back because they're not accustomed to having to do this fight by themselves. They usually have the Democrat Party and the elite media on their side to back them up. So it makes it very difficult for them. I'm not complaining, but it just makes it difficult for them.
Right. I totally get that, and it makes sense, right? With the Democrats in the minority, they don't have the same appeal and the same effect, the same power. And even the CNN, the fake news, others in the fake news seem to be switching up their lineup, and a couple of deep state actors, or I say deep state acolytes, are kind of stepping away. So it makes a lot of sense. I think all of that is a tribute to the MAGA movement actually just winning, the American people making a stance for themselves and speaking up. And I want to get your sense, and we have about a minute and a half before we take our first pause and then come right back to you. But with what we're seeing in the news today, with President Trump's comments about the plane crash and this collision that happened, DEI comments, which I also said on the radio last night, I thought I wouldn't be surprised if it is one of those things. What are you hearing? What's the latest? What can you tell us?
Well, I mean, we're not really hearing much yet because I know they're still going through this thing. I mean, look, it's just a tragedy, and until Absolutely. I get all the information, I'm going to reserve comment on it. My only question really is that an airliner, even a commuter jets are still very large planes, comparatively speaking, and so a helicopter, because of the physics of using a helicopter, it has the maneuverability to avoid. So something, in my view, did go horribly wrong. What that is, I don't want to put my finger on it right now because I just think I need more information to comment.
Sounds smart to me. Folks, we're on with Congressman Byron Donalds from Florida's 19th Congressional District. And Congressman, you were on the trail big time for President Trump and really coming through for him on many occasions. A lot of people speculating early on that you were their choice for vice presidential nominee. And here we are. I'm sure there's a big future for you. I want to make sure that you have a chance to kind of telegraph that a little bit, but I'm going to save that for when we come back for the break. So hang with me right here. Folks, we're coming right back with your calls and more. The phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4 Valdez. Don't go anywhere because we're coming back with Congressman Byron Donalds. I'm Rich Valdez.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. Rich Valdez keeping you company live till midnight, 1 o'clock in some areas. And I want to continue our conversation with Florida Congressman Byron Donalds. And Congressman, just before the break, I was talking about how, a lot of people had some really high hopes for you, and I'm sure they still do, to continue your career in politics. You're a young guy, and you're sharp, and you're giving the left hell. And what's on the radar for you? I'm hearing a lot of things, but I'd rather get it right from you.
I mean, look, first thing that's on the radar for me is making sure we get the president's agenda through Congress. The campaign was awesome, but it was a long campaign, and we won big, and we got to deliver. So that's the thing that's right in front of me. After that, then we'll make decisions about the future and stuff like that. But until that's done, and look, I know the rumors and I hear it all, and I've seen the articles like a lot of people have. But right now, it's about the president's agenda. Let's actually make the country great again. Once you get that done, then you have the ability to make other decisions.
And speaking about the president's agenda, Congressman, there's a lot of stuff out there, and I get a lot of it. Maybe you get some of it too. But being Puerto Rican, people send me stuff all the time, and they're like, look at this, Rich. Your guy Trump is now deporting Puerto Ricans. And obviously, this sounds and smells like fake news to me a mile away, and I think a lot of it is propaganda. But is this something that I guess you guys were expecting to be part of the plan? Because I didn't think that there'd be this much fake news out there about these types of things. What say you?
Oh, no, we knew this was coming. That's why, like everybody is really just going to be armed with the facts. And if there's something we learned, especially in this election cycle, but, Donald Trump's been doing it, he came down the golden escalator, is that we know how to hold the media accountable. And there's now an entire ecosystem of media that just reports the facts and actually takes time to explain what's going on, as opposed to just throwing up lies on the chyron or trying to create a narrative about stuff that just simply isn't true. So, we know what the left is going to do. They're going to try to do everything to derail the agenda. But the American people voted overwhelmingly for it, and it was just traditional Republican voters. It was a cross-section of our country. And so we're going to be focused on that. We're going to do the things that we said we were going to do. And when the fake news does what it does, which is being fake, we're going to hold them accountable.
Amen to that. Now, a lot of things that are, up in the air. And listen, I think it's been fantastic, right? The first 10 days, in my opinion, historic. How is it looking from your perspective, the relationship with your colleagues in the Senate to push through some of these agenda items that have to go through both houses, like no tax on tips and no tax on overtime?
No, we're unified, actually. We're unified. I don't think there's very little disagreement on Capitol Hill about what needs to be done. I think where people are seeing some disagreement is on the process, not on the actual policy. It's on the process of how we get it accomplished. And that's really about when do you deliver these things to the American people. And then I think there's going to be some more conversations about having to cut back spending. I mean, if you are going to say we got to get this inflation under control, then that means you have to get federal spending in a box. You got to put it back in a box. And Joe Biden used COVID as an excuse to massively expand federal spending. And we have to get that under control if you want to control the inflation in our economy and make sure people can just have stable prices in their ordinary lives. I
hear that. Now, Congressman, I know a lot of people, they see on TV and you're doing your thing and you're very popular congressman from Florida. But I don't know that everybody knows it. You're from Brooklyn, New York, like me. How did you make your way to Florida?
Yeah, man. Greyhound. I actually, it's funny. I was in New York about a month ago, and I went to college in Tallahassee. I got accepted to FAMU, Florida A&M, so I went to FAMU first, and then I transferred to Florida State and graduated from Florida State. But how I got there, Port Authority Terminal in Manhattan, got on the Greyhound. 24 hours later, I was in Tallahassee, Florida.
Wow. I've done that trip. The Greyhound's probably the grimiest bus into Florida. The cheapest, too.
It was grimy then.
Yeah, I bet. That's what I did
tough.
It, too, a long time ago.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, Congressman, I want to thank you for being with us. Is there anything you want to plug, any projects you're working on, anything you want to let the public know about?
No, I mean, look, the only project I'm working on is the president's agenda. That's the thing that matters right now. We got to deliver. And, I talked a little bit about disagreements on process. I think that what's in our best interest to get all this done is that we deliver quickly on border security money for Tom Homan and Kristi Noem, that we actually provide money to Pete Hegseth and the Department of Defense to be prepared to have our military be a lethal fighting force once again, and that we actually increase the nation's debt ceiling so that the Democrats aren't trying to jam up President Trump over the next 2 years. And I think we can deliver that. And I know, look, the debt ceiling is something that causes a lot of Americans consternation, but the debt ceiling is going to be raised. The question is that done with Chuck Schumer and Senate Democrats, or is it done just with Republicans? And I would argue if you do it with Chuck Schumer and Senate Democrats, they're going to charge a hefty price in order to raise that debt ceiling. So I think we Republicans, we just have to sit down, look at each other, get that off of President Trump's lap so he can be focused on leading this country in the way that the American people deserve.
Outstanding. Congressman Byron Donalds, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I want to thank you for being here tonight.
All right. Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
You got it, man. God bless. And amigos, we're coming right back with your phone calls and a whole lot more. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I just have to thank you for doing what you do every night and opening up that mic and hearing from Americans, letting them express their opinions, and really giving people a voice. So God bless you for what you're doing, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right. Well, that was nice of Dr. Phil. Thank you. Now, this is live radio. And in live radio, every now and again, you have to, do things on the fly. And one of those things I'm going to do right now is open a can, and you're going to hear it. So I wanted to forewarn you. Okay. No, that's not a brewski. This is actually, and this is not a commercial, by the way. This is a sparkling water that I absolutely love. It's called Tower Beverage. And it's called Tower Beverage because it's named after the Twin Towers. And they donate a portion of the proceeds when you buy these things to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Neither one of these is my sponsor, although I want to invite them both. If anybody's listening, become a sponsor. But I think it's a great cause, and it's a delicious drink. Hold on a second. That was terrific. And let me tell you, this orange flavor, it tastes like something from my youth. When I was a kid, my mom would take me to Kings Plaza Mall. I was over on, I think I was Flatbush Avenue, over by Avenue U, if I'm not mistaken, and by Mill Basin. And there was a big Alexander's there, but there was a place right when you walked in, and it was a stand called Orange Julius. And I loved it because, I was short, 3 or 4 feet tall. I was a little kid. And it had oranges in the window. And I was like, wow, I've never seen so many oranges. It was like going to the produce section, in the mall. And I loved it. It was this sugary orange drink. And I loved it. And this, even though this is water with nothing added, it tastes just like it. So anyway, that's enough of the free ad for Tower Beverage. But it is good stuff. And if they have it in your area, support the cause. Now, I want to talk about this stuff that I was talking about with Byron Donalds, because I didn't see it coming. I did not think that I would see this unending barrage. And maybe I'm seeing that because in the age of algorithms, you could be standing next to somebody, both of you scrolling on your social media, and both of you are going to see different ads because they're tailored to your interests. Not the case with other things in life, right? Television, radio, et cetera, et cetera. So it could be that I am specifically receiving these because of, who I am, my interests. But I'll say this. I've never seen so many videos. They started, I don't know, a week ago with this one girl, looked kind of Mexican, like a chola, if you know what that is. And if not, look it up. And, she's there and she's like, I voted for Trump and I can't believe he did this. He said he was going to take the criminals, but he took my abuela too. And she's crying, and it looks like a fake, phony fraud to me. But some people believe that. You know, crying videos are a big thing on social media. I think they're all fake. Who would videotape themselves crying? I'd run away if I was crying. I don't want to be on camera. But I've been seeing more of them. And yesterday I saw one of two guys. These guys are in Puerto Rico. And it seems to be that the focus is on Puerto Rico. And it makes sense to me, right? I would say the Hispanic group that has the most American citizens, because they're born American citizens, would be Puerto Ricans. And they were a big part of the people that helped elect Trump. So I don't think it's specifically targeted towards Puerto Ricans, but all Hispanics. But this one was two Puerto Rican guys in Puerto Rico. And there were some ICE arrests in Puerto Rico, some suspected, gang members that were in this one particular neighborhood. And they were Dominicans, so they were being deported to the Dominican Republic. Anyway, long story short, the reason I'm saying all this is because this guy comes out and he's like, look, we're in our restaurant, and we're right here, small restaurant, little town, and these ICE guys came, and they were like, oh, we want to see your kitchen staff. And he looked at his partner in the business, and the guy turns to him and says, do you have a warrant? And they said, I don't know what they said, and he said, well, you can't come in. And they were like, just to show us, what do you have to hide? Show us your people. And he responded, listen, I'm a retired police officer, and I know my rights. And he said that the ICE people left and then said to him, oh, you're probably illegal yourself. That's why you're mad. And he went on his rant about how offended he was and how disrespectful it was to say that. And I would agree that was. But the whole thing didn't make sense to me. It sounded like this story was being told by Jussie Smollett while visiting Puerto Rico. Right? Like he's the Milli Vanilli of social media all of a sudden. Because this guy was telling a story that I just don't see how that happens. If ICE is doing a targeted raid of a warrant of somebody that they know specifically was, some sort of criminal, and they're getting rid of him, why would they just knock on the door of a restaurant and be like, hey, how you doing, guys? Hey, can we see your kitchen staff? Why on earth? Have you seen the way these guys look, these ICE guys? They've got masks on. They're like 7 feet tall, 350 pounds of solid muscle. I don't think they're going to do that. These guys are going in there with warrants to kick down doors and get bad guys. It's like a SWAT team. I'm not going to sit there and say, hey, can I see your kitchen staff? This whole story sounds contrived to me. But, of course, the comments, people lighting it up because they're catering to their crowd, right? Hispanics that were always against Trump. And you're talking about the most extreme here, right? You're talking about the ones that embrace the AOCs and the Bernie Sanders of the world. So I just find it so interesting. So I said, oh, man, I wrote a comment, something snide, and then I moved on. But then later in yesterday, like almost close to showtime or after, or maybe it was this morning, now I see a story, another one, from a conservative influencer, a young Hispanic girl out in California. And she says, I'm not sure if this is true, but if it is, it's really messed up. ICE should not be doing this. That it's been reported, and it was reported by NBC's Spanish division, Telemundo. And a woman on Telemundo had a guest who was obscuring their name and their voice and their face, like, the silhouette type of thing where you can't see who it is, and saying that they had been through enough embarrassment and didn't want to embarrass their family. But I say this, and I say it when it's on our side or their side. If you're not willing to put your name on an allegation, don't make the allegation. That's the bottom line. Nobody's going to believe you. At least I'm not going to believe you. Right? The Kavanaugh stuff with Christine Blasey Ford. Okay, she put her name out there, but when she got ripped to shreds. You can't go and just say stuff and not be able to back it up. It's a different world now. So anyway, this woman gave this report to the reporter, and something, an outlet called the Latin Times picks it up, and I'd seen the story. I tweeted it out earlier, and it got a lot of response. But ultimately, I believe this is fake, phony, and fraud. Because this story goes like this. The mom, her sister, her daughter, and their youngest son, who's 3, are in the mall. Or the grandma, the mom, and the aunt, and the 3-year-old. And ICE hears them speaking Spanish and arrests them. They claim that the entire time that they were being arrested and brought in the ICE van to the facility, that they were telling in English, we're American citizens, we're from Puerto Rico, we're visiting Wisconsin, and we, you shouldn't be doing this to us. After they get there, they said they finally checked out their their credentials or whatever, that the woman happened to have a birth certificate on her, and they said, okay, sorry, and they let her go. Again, if this really happened, we have a huge problem on our hands. Since when do we arrest people for speaking Spanish in a mall, 3 women and a child, right? I've never seen that happen. And you think something like that could happen in the United States with not one single cell phone camera or security camera catching it? You can't do anything without a cell phone camera catching you. So again, this one sounds like a fake, phony fraud to me as well, designed to go after people's emotions. This is propaganda to make it look like Trump is not keeping his word and, you know, he's an evil dictator. And they're trying to, again, create the same narrative. I invited this family, and I want to do it again right now. I'm inviting this family to come on this program with the hundreds of affiliates that we have and the millions of listeners we have, live and national, to come on this program and tell us their story. If this did in fact happen, if you know someone that this happened to, I want to speak to them. I'm going to guess that I'm going to get as many guests as many times as I've had AOC on this program, all out crazy herself, because I don't believe this happened. Not in the least. Anyway, I'm going to pause right here. Coming right back. Your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I do wonder if there are protections in place for people who are here legally. I think of family members of my own that don't speak English very well, hardly at all. Are there protections in place to prevent against racial profiling?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. These folks can live in peace knowing that all of their willingness to come to this country legally and to be here, we welcome them with open arms. That's America's story and something that we're proud of.
That's CNN host Boris Sanchez on with Secretary Kristi Noem yesterday on CNN. And this is exactly what we're talking about, right? Now you got CNN putting the question out there saying, are there protections in place? Mr. Sanchez, I'm guessing you went to college, right? Maybe you didn't, but look, I didn't finish college, and I'll be the first one to tell you, I know my rights. I've read that Constitution more times than I can think of. Guess what? The protection's called the law. Nobody's going to profile you because they don't speak English very well. You think ICE is going to target them? I mean, are you really? Come on, man. People have been speaking Spanish forever. Trump was already president. Did you hear anybody getting deported for speaking Spanish when Trump was president for 4 years? I mean, this has got to be one of the dumbest questions I've ever heard, Mr. Sanchez. Anyway, more on that and everything else when we convene again next time. But until then, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Thursday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national. It's about 7 minutes after 10 p.m., so hopefully you're hearing us live. I'm in the New York area. Happy to be here. 833-482-5337, 833-4 Valdez is our phone number, and lots of discussion today, lots of discussion in these Senate confirmation hearings with Kash Patel telling everybody what was on his mind. Tulsi Gabbard also taking the mic today and giving it everything she had. Listen to her exchange with Senator Susan Collins. Check this out.
As you know, there has been speculation in the press that you met with Hezbollah, a terrorist organization affiliated with Iran. Have you ever knowingly met with any members, leaders, or affiliates of Hezbollah?
No, and it is an absurd accusation.
That was pretty brief and to the point. President Trump also weighing in on tariffs. Listen to this.
So we'll be announcing the tariffs on Canada and Mexico for a number of reasons. Number one is the people that have poured into our country so horribly and so much. Number two are the drugs, fentanyl, and everything else that have come into the country. And number three are the massive subsidies that we're giving to Canada and to Mexico in the form of deficits. And I'll be putting the tariff of 25% on Canada and separately 25% on Mexico. And we will really have to do that because we have very big deficits with those countries. Those tariffs may or may not rise with time.
And we'll keep you up to speed on what's going on with that as well. And of course, a little bit later today, we're going to have some discussion with a former pilot and aviation executive who's going to weigh in on this plane crash, his thoughts on so much of it. But earlier today, Todd Inman, who's a member of the National Transportation Safety Bureau, he shared a little bit about his thoughts on the cause of the incident.
The question was, has there been human error or mechanical failure? We don't know what we know just yet. We do not know enough facts to be able to rule in or out human factor, mechanical factors. That is part of the NTSB investigative process and where all of these groups will come together. It's one of the reasons why the NTSB is known as the gold standard. We will take the time that's necessary, but I'd also like to reiterate, if we find something that is a significant issue that warrants immediate action, we will not hesitate to make those recommendations and make them public. We have a good track record on that, and we want to continue doing so.
Again, that's Todd Inman with the NTSB. And we don't know a whole lot about a whole lot that's been going on, right? President Trump weighing in, also saying what he said earlier, that he believes that DEI potentially had something to do with this, and it doesn't take a genius to figure that out, but it does take someone that's somewhat genius to be an air traffic controller. And there's reports now that there was a shortage of air traffic controllers, and likely because this agency and many others in our government were failing to hire people because they were so focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion instead of on expertise and hiring the best person for the job. And that time and again, just it kills me when you think of, I'm going to tell you a story. I don't think I've ever told this story on the radio. My daughter, my oldest daughter, I went to a wedding with my then wife. It was November 18th, 2001. And my baby was only a few months old, 4 months old. We left her with my mother-in-law, right? So her grandmother. And to make this story not be too belabored, I'm straightening out my tie, looking in the mirror, like usual, going, man, what a great head of hair I have, that handsome devil. And I look good. I'm ready to go. I make sure my wife's ready to go. And I'm like, all right, my ex-wife, who's that time my wife. And I'm like, all right, let's go. We had dropped off the baby with her mom already the night before, so we could get out earlier. It was an early Sunday wedding in Connecticut. My cousin was getting married. And we're getting ready to go to the car, and the phone rings. And it's my mother-in-law. My phone rings, my cell phone. I answer it, and she can't speak. She's screaming my name. She's screaming frantically. So I'm like, oh, something bad happened. And I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, she couldn't get words out. She puts on her husband. He says, Richie. And then he starts with the same thing. It sounded like he was vomiting. I mean, I was like, this is scary. I told my wife, I don't know what's going on with them. Call them back, see what's going on, but let's get there. We get in the car and I'm driving. I hit this massive amount of traffic, like literally like New York City traffic. And I was in Jersey, but New York City traffic where, all you see is parked cars in front of you on the street. And I'm going to where they were. They were at church. And so I was driving to their church. And as I'm getting close to the church, I see an ambulance pulling up to the church. And I'm thinking, this is not good. My mother calls me. God rest her soul. She was alive back then. And she's like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know, woman, just shut up and pray, or something to that effect. And I was tempted to leave my car in the middle of the street and just run the rest of the way because I couldn't get any answers. Eventually, the traffic moved after the ambulance pulled up in front of the church, and I was able to get there. But it took me about a minute and a half. And in that time, or maybe it took me 2 minutes, whatever it was, in that time, they had already gotten my kid into the back of the ambulance, and the ambulance was pulling out as I got there. And so I'm following the ambulance, and I follow it, taking every red light until we get to a hospital in Hoboken, New Jersey. Now, back then, this hospital was called St. Mary Hospital. And I get there, and I'm like, hi, my daughter was just brought here. They're like, oh, come on in. I go into the emergency room. And in the emergency room, I'm like, where's my daughter? And nobody has an answer. And then one nurse comes and says, oh, we brought her in for CAT scan because she's so small. We want to make sure she's okay. And I was like, well, what happened? They're like, she had a fall. I still couldn't get any answers. I finally, then my wife is running with me while we were running to try to get in there. She twisted her ankle, broke a heel. It was just a whole thing. And just such a dramatic moment. And finally, the ER doctor comes and says, look, your kid, she's in and out of responsiveness. She fell, she hit her head. And we want to make sure there's no damage, that she's okay. So we're doing a CAT scan. And I'm like, oh, my gosh, I don't know what to say. I've never had a kid before. I'd only been a dad for 4 months. Obviously, this is 23 years ago. And I'm scared to death, but running on adrenaline. And I hear them saying, call Dr. So-and-so, call Dr. So-and-so. And they did. And, and they're paging whatever, this guy. And I'm there. I'm in the ER, and she comes back from CAT scan, and I see her, and she's just like whimpering and breathing heavy. 4-month-old baby, talking, I don't know, 11 or 12 pounds, maybe 18 pounds. She was very small. And, all right, maybe like 20 pounds. But she was 5 pounds when she was born. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I would have thought she'd been crying. She has a massive wound on her face. Her nose is split in half. Like one nostril was under one eyeball and the other nostril was on the other. And the middle of her nose was split open. And they were putting pressure on it. And they had to sew her nose closed. And they were saying, look, we're waiting for the best plastic surgeon we can find to make sure she doesn't have any scars because she's an infant. And it's a very delicate, it's a very tiny nose. And we need somebody who's not going to, leave marks and stuff. And I'm like, okay, yeah, get me the best person you got. And I'm looking at the entrance to this emergency room, and in comes a guy, and he looks like he was on Dancing with the Stars. It's the best way I could put it. He had kind of like longish hair on the top, but the sides were short, black hair, kind of flowy, if you will, and he was pushing it back out of his face. You could tell he was in yesterday's outfit because I could smell the alcohol on him and cologne, and he looked like he was out at a nightclub. And he was like, he's yelling his own name. He's like, it's Dr. Whatever. And who needed me? And I'm like, is this the guy they called for my kid that I can smell the booze on? And I was like, yeah, I'm not letting you near my kid. And he was like, fine, because I was having a good time before they paged me. And I was like, are you all right? And he was like, I'm the best there is. And I was like, oh, my God, what do I do? And I was having a moment. And this guy, I'm not going to say he was very flamboyant in his mannerisms and his speech. And I was like, I don't know what kind of partying this guy was doing. I don't know what he's up to, but it wasn't the type of person I was used to being around. And I was like, oh, man. And he's like, listen, it's your kid. It's her face. Let him call somebody else. And he literally told me, he said, I was having a good time before I came here. And I thought to myself, anybody that's that arrogant probably can deliver. Few people talk smack like that unless they can deliver. And I was like, Lord, I'm putting this in your hands. And this, by my estimate, hungover homosexual surgeon in his Dancing with the Stars outfit was the guy that did an amazing job on my daughter. Now, why did I tell that story? Because all of the other stuff didn't matter, right? His party lifestyle, his orientation, his preference, none of that mattered. What mattered was that he was the best at his job. And when push comes to shove, when it's your kid on that operating room table, when it's your kid that needs that help, you want the best. You want to make sure you're getting an expert, not the DEI hire, not the person that checked those boxes and didn't have the expertise. So when President Trump says we have to make sure we're hiring the right people, man, by God, you're right. We got to make sure we're getting the right people because life depends on it. And just the same way that life depends on that, life depends on us doing the right thing by law enforcement. And in a separate incident, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but when you have people that are now actively trying to sabotage ICE, when they know they're there to do a raid, when they're there to do an apprehension of some felony or a criminal alien, we have to do the right thing. And sadly, not everybody's doing it. So more on that when we return. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And listen to this. The Federal Communications Commission, the chair, Brendan Carr, he's launched an investigation into NPR and PBS, saying, I am concerned that NPR and PBS broadcasts could be violating federal law by airing commercials. Ooh. Something that he wrote to news outlets in a letter obtained by the New York Times. In particular, it's possible that NPR and PBS member stations are broadcasting underwriting announcements that cross the line into prohibited commercial advertisements. Mm-hmm. In a statement to The Hill on Thursday, NPR President and CEO Catherine Mayer said, the outlet's programming and underwriting messaging complies with federal regulations, including the FCC guidelines on underwriting messages for non-commercial educational broadcasters. That's how they get by, right? They are non-commercial, yet, and that's why they're able to be the propaganda mills that they are. Anyway, and these member stations are expected to be in compliance as well. So I'll keep you up to speed on what happens there, because a representative for PBS also told The Hill that they are proud of the non-commercial educational programming they provide to all Americans through their member stations. It sounds like that would have been said better in a British accent. We work diligently to comply with the FCC's underwriting regulations and welcome the opportunity to demonstrate that the commission, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so I want to add a third person that they should be investigating here. And it's the radio station that George Soros just bought. And it's in California. One of them. He got a whole bunch of them. And this is an interesting betrayal here, right? Because one of these Soros-controlled stations is now ratting out the cops, right? Unmasking the vehicles of undercover ICE agents in San Jose, California. And that's we talked about this a little bit yesterday, and I heard it on social media, and then I went to the council members' website, and his Instagram rather, and I saw that he was posting the same thing that they were talking about on the radio. He was posting it on Instagram, and I'm guessing on his other social media as well. But listen to what went on with this councilman Peter no sé qué and the radio host. Listen to this.
First, though, I'm Brett Burkhardt, and here's what's happening. San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan and Councilmember Peter Ortiz confirmed today that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents are currently carrying out an operation on the east side of town. The Santa Clara County Rapid Response Network, which is a community defense projecting system for immigrant communities against deportation threats, it first reported the activity on its platforms. In a statement to KCBS Radio, Mayor Mahan says the city's police department does not assist with or participate in these operations in any way. The county's response network says agents in San Jose were in unmarked vehicles, including a black Dodge Durango, a gray Nissan Maxima, and white Nissan truck. ICE agents were also reported outside a residence on South White and Tully roads, and officers were reportedly at the target on King and Story Road. Stay with KCBS. We'll be tracking it for you.
So KCBS is now tracking them. And what's interesting here is that this area of San Jose, California, it suffers a lot of violent migrant gang activity. So in effect, now George Soros' fund that has backed the sale of the debt of these radio stations, and this radio station and this council member and the mayor are all the de facto lookouts for these gang members. Isn't that something? Well, anyway, I want to get to this because there's an excellent piece on this on newsbusters.org, and Joe Vazquez has got the lead on this. Joe Vazquez, welcome back.
Mi amigo, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, brother. Thank you. How's everything with you?
Everything is going well. It's a good day in the Republic.
Amen, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. But, I can guarantee that just listening to that audio again, it just got me angry. It was like listening to it for the first time. It really made me upset, to say the least.
No, absolutely. And I want to really dig into that story with you. We're going to take a quick pause in a moment, but when we come back, I want to make sure that you hit all the points here, because I think this is just fascinating to me. Like I said, these guys have become the lookout for these gang members. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a pause here. Also going to invite the callers to call in case they want to ask you some questions. Folks, you know the number. It's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And keep it locked right here. We're about to kick off our conversation with Joe Vazquez from the MRC, newsbusters.org, and me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
Across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
First, though, I'm Brett Burkhardt, and here's what's happening. San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan and Councilmember Peter Ortiz confirmed today that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents are currently carrying out an operation on the east side of town.
Going on to identify what was going on, down to the vehicles they were in. Again, this is an area that's known for its violent gang activity, and this radio station is one of these stations that are part of the group that was bailed out by George Soros-backed firm, and it seems like they're all in with Mr. Soros and his plan to, I don't know, what's it called? The Open Society Foundation. I guess they should call it the Open Borders Foundation. Anyway, I want to get the scoop on this from Joe Vazquez from the MRC. Joe, welcome back. Talk to us about what's going on here.
Well, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, this station was actually one of the number of stations that was acquired by Soros and his $400 million purchase of a 40% stake in Odyssey, which was going bankrupt. And so now he has access to all of these stations, including 16, at least 50,000 watt radio stations, which means that the reach is enormous. That's problem number one. If you're wondering why Soros, did this, well, let's take a look at some of the activism that's going on within the stations that he's controlling, like what KCBS just did. KCBS, you just played the clip, so I don't need to rehash what happened. But what KCBS just did is the equivalent of going, hey, every violent gang criminal in San Jose, there's reports of ICE riding around in the Scooby-Doo mobile, just so you know, on this road and that road. I mean, goodness sakes, it's like we dox because the illegal criminal alien rocks. It's insane. It's if not criminal, they literally put ICE agents' lives in danger. It is absolutely irresponsible to say the least, but it's just pure evil. The fact that you would put officers' lives in danger, what? Because you have a certain political bent? We know that Soros supports open borders. That's part of the ethos of the Open Society Foundation. That's part of his entire system, pushing open borders. So it's kind of ironic that a station that's underneath his control after he just buys Odyssey is out here doxing law enforcement officials and helping violent gang members either escape custody or know where they are and they could possibly do some harm. It's utterly bonkers that this managed to pass through. At what point does stupid become too stupid to just be stupid? This was, I mean, does political activism have something to do with it? Am I crazy? No. I mean, it's just, I was listening to it and I was just mind-boggled that this was allowed to go over the air. Just absolutely insane.
I'm with you, brother. I thought to myself, I pride myself on saying whatever I feel like saying, whatever I feel needs to be said. And I thought, would I do it? If the shoes are on the other foot, if I were, if Joe Biden was doing some sort of operation that I thought was unconstitutional, and I knew he was sending his goons from the Secret Service or whatever federal law enforcement he'd corrupted, and would I get on there and say, guys, they're in and I don't know that I would, only because I think I'd be somewhat skittish about interfering with some sort of law enforcement activity and maybe getting myself into trouble, right? Next thing you know, you hear, I got to go, guys. We're going to commercial early, I don't want that to happen. So I don't know. But I do think I likely would not do that, especially in the middle of it, just because, I did some law enforcement support work and my brothers were cops. And I think it's a risky proposition. You don't want to put people that are doing a job at risk. That's just my thought. But I think you're right. And my hope is that this story makes enough noise and Commissioner Brendan Carr gets to take a look at what's going on here and get to the bottom of it, because these types of abuses, they really shouldn't be able to continue. If, in fact, you and I agree it's an abuse, but maybe the FCC thinks otherwise, and maybe we could invite him on. I've interviewed him before, and he's a terrific guy to talk to. Maybe we could talk to him about this. But when you were putting this stuff together, did you find any other instances of politicians kind of pushing back? Because as I was doing it, that same mayor seems to be doing this type of thing everywhere he goes. I found that this guy, Peter Ortiz, the councilman, he's doing it on Instagram and putting on his social media, same thing, with photos of the cars.
It's insane. Like, you would think, like, who in the world are you representing? Who voted you into office? The American citizens or the MS-13 gang members that came across the border? You tell me. You tell me who you're protecting. Tell me who you're supposedly elected to serve. Are you to serve the American citizens? The Latino citizens that are within your jurisdiction, they have to be subject to this? Why? Because you want to check off some political points, some DEI points somewhere that you're guarding criminals? It's bonkers. It's utterly bonkers. It's just evil to think that this is where we've come in society, where law enforcement has to be looking over the shoulder, not just for the gang members that could possibly put a target on their back, but the people, but the people that are in political power, that they could end up outing them, and the media that's covering them. So who's protecting them? Who's protecting law enforcement? Yeah. No, nobody.
Right.
Utterly nuts.
The idea is that law enforcement is going to protect themselves as long as we're not setting them up and playing lookout for the gangs.
Exactly. And look, there's the ICE agents at the Scooby-Doo mobile.
Right. Yeah, it really is a very a tough one. I didn't see it coming. At least I didn't think things were going to happen to this degree. There was always community activists that said if they come and they don't have a warrant, you don't have to talk to them. I've heard that plenty of times. But I hadn't seen something like this. And something else I hadn't seen, and I just mentioned this a little while ago to Congressman Byron Donalds, that the amount of propaganda that's out there, and I sent you one today, but I saw a different one yesterday, that is out there, to me is shocking. Right? I didn't think we'd be able to crank it out that quickly, the people, our enemies, the adversary here. But I saw a video, I don't know, maybe it was Friday, and this girl looked like I'm going to say Mexican, like Chola, that style, the big earrings, the heavy eye makeup. And she's like, I voted for Trump, but I wish I had the audio because it's so funny. But she's, I voted for Trump, and now he just deported my abuela when she was going to work. And this isn't cool. And she starts crying, and she's like, I can't believe this. And she's like, people, watch out for your grandmas. And again, I don't mean to laugh. I'm sure somebody out there had their grandmother deported, and it was brutal for them. But my point here is that I don't think these are real stories. I think they're just making this stuff up because I don't think I've seen a situation like that, right? All the news, even the fake news, CNN has been out there. Fox News has been traveling. Dr. Phil's network, Merit TV, has been out there. Mm-hmm. All you see are these hardcore gangbanger types with felony charges. I haven't seen not one grandma yet.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you look at that. You look at Mark Levin said it best. He called them pseudo events. You put these plants on the air to stoke some sort of emotional response from the viewer. I mean, that's the oldest trick in the book. So that's why a lot of that's going on. It's going on about the economy. Oh my goodness gracious! I mean, the Washington Post just came out with a story today trying to blame President Trump for GDP growth slowing in the fourth quarter of 2024. That's October through December. Before he was even elected, they're saying that the fact that he was talking about putting tariffs, that affected consumers pulling back on spending in the fourth quarter. He didn't even have a chance to put his people in office yet. That's not even enough time to pass gas. But it's just nuts. It's utterly nuts. That this is what I wrote in my story. I wrote up the Washington Post because of that nonsense, and I said, "Wow, that was quick." Trump is not even in office for what, like 10 days, and they're already trying to spin stories about it. It's just crazy, to the extent of the propaganda. Well, they're going into full panic mode. It's meltdown, and I love watching it. I whip out the popcorn, and I'm loving it, man.
Folks, we're on with Joseph Vazquez from the MRC. We're discussing one of his pieces in newsbusters.org. And Joseph Vazquez, tell everybody that's listening a little bit about what you have coming down the pipe, what we can expect from you, and what we should be looking for.
Well, you'll be seeing a lot of my work on George Soros. That story's not going to end. I'm not sure if your listeners know about this, but, George Soros groups, finance groups, literally minutes after Trump took the oath of office, launched a lawsuit against him because of the Department of Government Efficiency, trying to get that nuked. Literally minutes after he took the oath of office. So the Soros empire is not slowing down. So I am doing as much investigation as I can into the Soros scheme to completely undermine the Trump administration. I also had another report recently, and I found out that one of the groups backed by Soros was trying to get on in the leadership position at the Department of Government Efficiency. They were lobbying Musk to get a role. Thank God Musk, according to them, turned them down. But Soros is not sleeping. They're not taking a rest. They're not taking this defeat lightly. They're going to be working. So check out my work on newsbusters.org. I'm going to be investigating this empire and exposing it wherever I can.
Joseph Vazquez, let everybody know how to find you on social.
You can find me on social media at JV3MRC, and I have to warn, I'm a bit of a troll, but I love it because I get to tick off the libs a bit. But you can check me out at JV3MRC, also on Truth Social and Parler as well. I'm also on Getter. You can find me everywhere. I always post my content, and I always love to interact with my readers. It's fun.
Absolutely. Folks, check him out. I follow him. He's a great follow. And Joseph Vazquez, I want to thank you for being here, brother. Thanks for keeping us up to speed on this, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you again soon.
Sounds good, brother. Thank you so much. You have a good night.
You got it, brother. God bless. And amigos, we continue with your thoughts, your calls, and so much more when we come back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I'm sure you've heard it by now, but just want to remind you, in case you didn't know, that former New Jersey Senator Robert Menendez, Bob Menendez, also known as Gold Bar Bob, sentenced to 11 years in jail yesterday. And yeah, that's it. That's where that ends. We'll see how that goes. I don't know if he does time, if how this whole thing is going to look. Does he get it deferred? Interesting stuff. Anyway, I want to go to the phones with your calls. Excuse me. Let's go to Sandra, Silver City, New Mexico, KNUW. Sandra, very quickly. Go right ahead.
Okay, it's Sandra, middle initial L, and then Barry. Okay, and New Mexico, but I'm a Californian. And I was.
What's on your mind tonight?
Huh?
What would you like to say on the radio?
Okay, I'm a patriot who's been fighting for America along with Trump for at least 20 years now. He put me on the Trump coalition when he was in office before, the task force, and also the Presidential Advisory Board. My message is to Trump. I'm still here, and call me, 575-654-5691.
Okay, well, you don't want to give everybody your phone number. You're going to get all sorts of unwanted calls. Well, Sandra, I want to thank you for your patriotism and for your commitment to electing a solid president, because it's people like you that we need in order to make America great again. So God bless you, Sandra, and thank you for your call. Let's continue. Let's go to Jerome, Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Jerome, what's on your mind, sir?
What's up, coochie coochie? As Charles would say, coochie 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 coochie. Hey,
oh
yeah,
boy,
Tulsi. You know what? The Republican Party, y'all are not a full-fledged new brand version of the Beverly Hillbillies. Tulsi, can you answer a question, Tulsi? Coochie, Tulsi.
So you don't like Tulsi, huh?
Oh, no, I love Tulsi because I'm glad y'all got her now. Y'all can keep her. You can keep her and Nancy Mace and all other losers in the bird brains, like what do you call her? Who's the girl? The lady he called a bird brain that was to work for the former governor, Nikki Haley. Oh, yeah, bird brain. Hey, they're all a bunch of bird brain Republicans.
All right, thank you. Jerome in Charleston, South Carolina. I don't even know what to do with that one. I love his energy, and I have to, for sake of the brand, I have to let them have their moment. You know, when I was listening to talk radio, and I'd get bored of what was really going on live, I would YouTube old episodes of a guy named Bob Grant, who was a mentor to Mark Levin and a mentor to Curtis Sliwa, who both mentored me. And I would listen to Grant, and Grant had a segment of his show called GAG, Get at Grant. And the rules of it were you had 30 seconds to make your case against him, and he couldn't interrupt you. And these people would call and say, Mr. Grant, you're blah, 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 and you're pompous, and you're arrogant, and you think you know everything, but you don't know anything. And it was really a very fun segment to listen to because it was really classic talk radio from New York back in the days. So I don't know, maybe we'll do something like that. And whenever Jerome calls, it's me practicing that, right? I practice my restraint. I just zip it, and I let him have his moment. Jerome, thank you for the call, brother. Let me see. Yeah, we're gonna do one more here. We're gonna do it. We're going to go to Butler, Pennsylvania, Trump country, KDKA. David, what's on your mind?
Oh, this is a bird brain Republican calling you, and thank you for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
Bird brain and all. First, I want to say God bless the poor families who've lost loved ones in this terrible tragedy.
Oh, yeah.
God bless them. And we're with them in their suffering. I have a simple question for the Democrats. They budgeted one controller for that shift at a busy airport in Washington, D.C. One person by himself or herself, whatever. The question I have is, what flights got ignored when that air traffic controller had to go to the throne? What flights got controlled when he had to take a squirt? What flights got controlled when he tried to eat a sandwich? How can anyone in their right mind assume that in an airport as busy as Washington, D.C., that only one air traffic controller on duty is sufficient to manage the aircraft? The second point I would make, there's been a lot of talk about the budget and what has the budget been spent on. And I hate to say it, but our military readiness reports this year have been dismal. A lot of the military readiness reports have to do with purchase of equipment, maintenance of equipment. And I'm hoping that this accident was not because the poor pilot in that helicopter looked at an altimeter that gave him a false reading on his altitude.
Yeah, I can't venture into that. I have no idea. But what I can say is I think President Trump summed it up pretty accurately. And he said his thoughts were that this likely had to do with negligence or incompetence. And if it did, then, they'd have to handle that accordingly. We'll find out. I mean, maybe it was completely and totally accidental. I don't know the answer to that yet, but I'm looking forward to it. And coming up, we have a guest coming in that is a former pilot, former aviation executive that knows a whole lot about airplanes. We've had him on before, and he's going to help shed a little bit of light on this so I think that we understand it better and know which questions to even ask. David in Butler, Pennsylvania, not so bird brain at all. Thank you, brother. KDKA in the building. Folks, your calls from Idaho, Alabama, Michigan, and more coming up next. 833 Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go, and a big shout out to our legacy line. You know the number to that one, 866-50-JIMBO. And I want to, I'm going to go to Paul. Paulie, forget about it. Boise, Idaho, KBOI. Go right ahead.
Yeah, Rich, thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to mention to those doubters or naysayers that as the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump can say whatever he wants to at that podium, whether it's DAI or DEA or whatever.
No, you're right. I've seen a
say.
lot of reports saying he basically baselessly claimed this, that, and the other. It's called an opinion, man. Anyway, Paul, thanks for the call, brother. America, stick with me. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And I want to welcome you to the Thursday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you all, the American people. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And before we get into the late night national town hall conversation, I want to talk about what happened during the day today, right? Because I like to keep you up to speed on what's going on in America at night. And today, El Trompito was giving commentary and responses on a bunch of things, from tariffs to this horrific plane crash that we're going to talk about in a moment. And he had a back and forth during his press conference with several people. And one of the things that he talked about that the media held on to was how detrimental DEI has been to a number of agencies in Washington. Listen to this.
How you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash?
Because I have common sense. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website.
We see like everyday life that very often those diversity hires cause sometimes issues, as you just mentioned. So what plan do you have? Are we going to see some fire? Are you going to fire some of those diversity hires in the federal government?
I would say the answer is yes. If we find that people aren't mentally competent, you see the language. The language is put out by them. I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first.
You got to put the policy first. And, of course, then you've got Kash Patel. Kash Patel having lots of toss-ups today with a number of senators, one of those being the senator known as Dick Durbin. And this one was about the January 6th pardons. Listen to this.
So do you think that America is safer because these 1,600 people have been given an opportunity to come out of serving their sentences and live in our communities again?
Senator, I have not looked at all 1,600 individual cases. I have always advocated for imprisoning those that cause harm to our law enforcement and civilian communities. I also believe America is not safer because President Biden's commutation of a man who murdered 2 FBI agents, Agent Kohlers and Williams' family, deserve better than to have the man that point blank range fired a shotgun into their heads and murdered them released from prison. So it goes both ways.
Leonard Pelletier was in prison for 45 years. He's 80 years old, and he was sentenced to home confinement. So he's not free, as you might have just suggested.
He killed 2 FBI agents.
That's true, he did, and he went to prison for it and should have. My question to you, though, is do you think America is safer because President Trump issued these pardons to 1,600 of these criminal defendants, many of whom violently assaulted our police in the Capitol?
Senator, America will be safe when we don't have 200,000 drug overdoses in 2 years. America will be safe when we don't have 50 homicides in a day.
So you just won't answer the question.
Yeah, you know, I think Kash did a great job pushing the envelope forward and pushing back. But you know me, I love to take the bait. And I would have taken the bait and said, Senator, America's just as safe with that guy in jail as it is with him outside of jail. The guy's not a threat. And that's the bottom line. Keep it moving. These guys, they get to me. These senators with their questioning, right? It's not about even vetting Kash Patel's ability, right? I mean, maybe they could pose the question that this would have some sort of they were trying to get a sense of his judgment, but in reality, come on. The FBI director is not intimately involved in pardons. So what's the difference here? What I want to know is, you know, are you going to focus on intelligence and counterintelligence? Are you going to focus on being the premier investigatory body in federal law enforcement? Are you going to clean up the agency? What types of reforms are you looking at? What's your plan for reform? This is what I want to know, right? He's there because we want a reformer. And one clip that we played earlier, it was about making the FBI a museum, a comment that he made. He should have doubled down and said, yeah, they're going to move in, leave the J. Edgar Hoover building as is, let everybody see what it's like, and we're moving the FBI somewhere else. I would have loved it. I mean, but again, they don't do this for me, and they have to answer these questions as they do, and that's fine. But some of these questions are just so petty from the Democrats. Anyway, I want to get your thoughts on these things and everything else we're talking about. And remember, straight ahead, we're going to talk about this plane crash with former pilot and aviation executive who's going to be joining us. I want to bring Jay Ratliff back in. He's scheduled to be with us in a little bit. But first, your calls. I want to go to Coleman, Alabama, and check in with our buddy Ron, listening on WLS, streaming the Chicago station in Alabama. Go ahead, Ron.
Yes, sir. Thanks for taking my call. I would like to know if they're going to do any investigations on Pelosi. Byrd wrote a letter saying that they deserve more than the $38,000 for playing the game, and this is a letter and that was posted. He wanted more than they had gotten.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. I know who you're talking about. You're talking about the Lieutenant Byrd from the Capitol Police Department, and I'm not familiar with this this $38,000. I think you're talking about some sort of compensation, but I'd have to look into it and get back to you, Ron. I appreciate the call. Big shout out to everybody in Alabama, and I want to keep it moving over here. Where do I want to go? I want to go to Joe, Salem, Arkansas, KSAR. Joe, go right ahead. Joe, can you hear me? No, Joe? We're going to Ken. Ken's in Lansing, Michigan on WILS. Ken, go right ahead.
Good evening, my brother in truth. With Robert Kennedy Jr. up there in front of all them Democratic jackass morons trying to give him such a hard time because he cares about our environment and what kind of food. I heard him say during that hearing today, Rich, that when his uncle was the president, American adults, 3% were obese. Today, 73% of American adults are obese. And these people got the nerve to get on him. But in saying that, I live here in mid-Michigan. Battle Creek, Michigan is about 50 miles from me. That's where Kellogg's company makes all their cereal. Well, they got special cereal for them people in Europe and Canada. They're real special fellas, real special folks, because the crap they feed us Americans has got 10 times more chemicals in it than what's allowed in Canada or Europe. So I wish I was one of them special people from Canada or Europe. Good night, Rich.
I love the point that you made about those special people, right? And I think we're all going to become those special people. Just imagine that. And again, I only got into this not too long ago. I was almost 300 pounds 6 or 7 years ago. And little by little, I'm learning more about health and nutrition and realizing all this stuff that I like Red Dye 40. These things don't contribute to a very healthy lifestyle. So excellent point, and I think this is exactly what RFK is talking about. I don't really see eye to eye with him on the environmental stuff, but I definitely do agree with his position on Big Pharma on many issues, whether it's vaccines or even the food. We have to get that stuff under control. We shouldn't be offering our people or allowing our people to eat food that most other countries ban. I mean, the red flags should be going off when we realize that our youth are getting fatter and fatter. They're getting sicker and sicker. And honestly, the boys are becoming less manly. And that's not good. So, yeah, we got to get it in gear. And I think this 70-something-year-old RFK, Jr., who can rock out, 20 or 50 push-ups, on command, not a bad choice. Folks, I'm going to pause right here. We're going to come back, bring in our guest to talk about this plane crash, this horrific accident, and so much more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Look at Rich Valdez. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
We're working hand in hand with the Army to modernize Blackhawk, to incorporate new technology, new capabilities, to create the Blackhawk of the future. And one critical technology of all these things is autonomy. And that brings me here today.
Are we really going to fly this optimally piloted autonomous Black Hawk in Connecticut from 300 miles away right here in Washington, D.C.? And the answer is a resounding yes, we're going to.
You're going to see the aircraft come up to a stabilized hover, and this is going to simulate contested logistics operations where we would have a ground crew hooking up a sling load to the aircraft.
And this aircraft is holding position remarkably well.
That is audio from a video from Lockheed Martin they released just a few months ago, where they demonstrated that a Black Hawk can be flown remotely. They conducted this experiment in Washington, D.C., I should say this demonstration in Washington, D.C., flying it from Connecticut, which I think is interesting. And now people all over the internet are citing this and other things, saying, we want to know what's going on. Was this Black Hawk manned? Was it unmanned? What is the story? Of course, the chair of the National Transportation Safety Board, Jennifer Homendy, also weighing in on the crash. Listen to this.
As part of any investigation, we look at the human, the machine, and the environment. So we will look at all the humans that were involved in this accident. Again, we will look at the aircraft, we will look at the helicopter, we will look at the environment in which they were operating in. That is standard in any part of our investigation.
That's Jennifer Homendy, chair of the NTSB. Now, I want to go to Jay Ratliff, aviation consultant, former Northwest Airlines executive. He's been on with us before. He knows his stuff. Jay Ratliff, when we look at this, do we know yet if there were humans on board? Was this thing flying by itself? Is it too early to tell? What say you?
Well, if we can take at face value what we're being told, this was a training flight with 3 occupants in the helicopter. And these weren't newly trained individuals. They were doing their annual recurrent training, just one of the things that the pilots do to keep their skills sharp. So apparently what we're being told is there were 3 on board that Black Hawk helicopter as they were flying that evening. So obviously we're going to see where things are going. And, you know, you had the clip about the fully automated Black Hawk with no pilots. Commercial aviation is headed in that direction as well. We have Airbus right now that, big time is developing an aircraft that will allow it to be operated by a single pilot. And then, of course, the next step is going to be to take the automation that has presented itself, and certainly with the future of AI, and allow a fully automated aircraft to fly absent a pilot. Now, anytime we have an accident investigation, one of the things that we look at is the human error element, which tends to be in most accidents. So a lot of the people will say, Jay, we're trying to make commercial aviation safer, the airlines tell us, by removing that human element out of the cockpit to make things safer, which is a bunch of crap. What they want to do is not pay pilots, so the thought is by having a fully automated aircraft, they can save a great deal of money, and that's exactly what they're after. The problem with that kind of an approach is you can only program it for certain things. Think about the Miracle on the Hudson. That had never happened before. So what happens on a fully automated aircraft that encounters something it's not programmed for over the skies of downtown New York? So, we're headed in that direction. I will go kicking and screaming, but all of the things we're seeing from ground vehicles to aviation are going to be automated, and we're headed in that direction. But that doesn't appear to be the case here, and of course this investigation is ongoing, and I have full confidence that the National Transportation Safety Board, which is an all-star team, will do their job. It'll take some time for us to get a full report 8 to 12 months from now, but they'll be able to determine what happened and hopefully identify ways that we can change some things in the future to try to prevent this as much as humanly possible from ever happening again.
Folks, we're on with Jay Ratliff, aviation consultant, former Northwest Airlines executive. Jay Ratliff, you sound like a pilot. Like I want to fly the friendly skies with you. Were you a pilot before you were an executive?
I was not. I didn't want to take that pay cut, so I enjoyed being on the ground. But to me, customer service was always where my heart was at, and that's what I enjoyed doing. And when you look at a situation like this, I'm reminded, having done this for 33 years, it's been 16 years almost since I've had to talk about an aviation accident of an aircraft here in the United States, when we had the Colgan air crash in Buffalo, New York, in February of 2009. So we have gone that entire distance between now and then enjoying the safest air ever of commercial jet travel. And one of the reasons that we have that is because with every accident and near accident, the NTSB does their job. They give recommendations to the FAA. Some of those are implemented. Most of them are not. But every step we try to make aviation safer, and certainly that's going to be the goal here because, look, that's the only way to honor the lives of those that were lost is let's make that their deaths count for something by making future travelers safer.
Jay Ratliff, now tell me a little bit about, you mentioned they're an all-star team. I'm not familiar with a bunch of people from the NTSB, but I know that this is their domain, right? This is what they do. And like you said, they don't have a whole lot to do because they're not doing a lot of accident investigations, thank God. But what does this process look like? I mean, it looked like a crime scene from last night, with everything. The only thing missing was the yellow tape. What does this process look like from your experience?
Rich, once again, you are spot on, my friend, because anytime that we have an aircraft situation like this, it is initially treated as a crime scene. The FBI is involved. They're making sure there's no elements of foul play that appear to be evident. And the FBI quickly stepped back on this because it was pretty clear that wasn't the case. But you also have a great deal of security because most of the debris fell into the water. And if any of it makes it to shore, the concern is people will take those parts home as souvenirs. And those parts can impede the investigation of the NTSB. It was the same thing when Columbia came down over Texas. NASA was begging people, if you see something, don't touch it, call law enforcement so that we can come and get it. Because when you're putting together an investigation as thorough as the National Transportation Safety Board, every single component tells a story. And they don't have a preconceived idea here about, oh, yeah, we know what happened, and let's find the evidence that fits that. They allowed the evidence to dictate the course of the investigation. I've sat through several NTSB briefings, and the thoroughness of that team is unbelievable. One of the few government agencies, maybe the only government agency that I have that much confidence in because of the job that they do. And, it's going to be interesting to see if it was the military at fault, we'll find out. If it was the American crew at fault, we'll find out. Mechanical, I mean, they're going to check everything.
All right, Jay Ratliff, stick with me. We're going to come right back and put a pin in this. Folks, we're coming right back with Jay Ratliff, former Northwest Airlines executive aviation consultant, and me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
One of the black boxes or data recorders from the CRJ-700, the American Airlines jet, has been recovered. That's coming from congressional sources who have been demanding answers all day long from federal investigators about what happened. This airport here in D.C. is used by so many in Washington, including those who serve in Congress, so they are very interested to know exactly what happened. However, the NTSB says it's way too soon to jump to any sort of conclusions here because there are so many pieces of this puzzle that they are simply trying to piece together. Video taken last night showing Reagan Airport also shows the moment of impact as that CRJ-700 was colliding with the Army Black Hawk helicopter, the Sikorsky, that happening just about 8:47 last night. The search is still underway for other debris that may have floated even away from where the majority of this crash was. But as investigators have said today, they know that this is going to take some time to figure out. A preliminary report still at least a month away, and it's only one piece of the puzzle.
That is a report from Fox, and I got to say, a month away. Man, this is like we're all waiting here. And I hate to seem insensitive here, but I think everybody's just so curious as to what is going on. And that was the cliffhanger that Jay Ratliff left us on when we left, whether it was the military flight team or the American Airlines cockpit. Who was at fault? Somebody was at fault. Was it competence? Was it incompetence? Was it negligence? Was it an actual accident? My hope is that it was none of the above. That that it was just a mishap. But Jay Ratliff, walk us through it. What is this process of finding the black box and retrieving its elements entail?
Well, there's two black boxes on this aircraft, like we have with every commercial aircraft here in the United States and around the world. The one is the cockpit voice recorder, and the other black box is the flight data recorder. The flight data recorder gives the instrument readings the entire flight as far as the sequence, the settings, and it gives the investigators an opportunity to see what was done in what order. The cockpit voice recorder is, I think, going to be the more important element here because it will bring about the conversations that were taking place on the flight deck. We'll know if the crew had any advance indication that there was a Black Hawk helicopter in the vicinity. And seeing the video, as horrific as it was, the American Airlines regional jet not making any last-minute sudden movement of any kind suggests to me that they never saw it until probably the moment of impact. So we're going to have to wait and see. And, when it happens, you always look at, okay, what was the weather? And the weather was 10 miles, clear visibility, and everything looked to be in good shape there. So that's one of the things we can kind of rule out. But one of the things that could have also happened is either of these two aircraft could have had a mechanical situation at a critical moment that could have caused the flight crew not to be able to respond as they needed. I think it's unlikely, but that's one of the 300 things the NTSB is going to check. You're also wondering, okay, did any of the pilots have a medical episode at the worst possible moment? Could that have contributed? So, when you look at all of the things that they have to do, this rush for answers that these politicians who aren't really known for getting a lot done fast, I find a little offensive because we've got to do this right. And the idea that we can decide immediately what happened, please tell us now, jumping up and down like a spoiled child, is simply not the way this process works. And the NTSB is going to do their thorough job. Now, when it happened, one of the things that caught me off guard immediately was that flight corridor that the helicopters operate up and down the river. Typically, it's visual flight rules where the flight crew is responsible for working with the tower and making sure that their airspace is clear of any other aircraft. But it's typically, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm almost certain of this, the ceiling is 200 feet. Now, the crash, according to the initial or preliminary flight information, took place nearly at 400 feet. So if I'm correct that 200 feet is the ceiling, one of the questions that have to be answered is what was the helicopter doing at 400 feet? If it wasn't 200 feet, but it was 400 feet, then okay, everybody was where they needed to be. But when you listen to the air traffic control back and forth with the military, there were several times where the crew of the helicopter, they requested VFR clearance. In other words, they're saying, will you give us permission to proceed with us looking out for other aircraft? And each time the tower said yes. But many times the tower said, do you see the regional jet that's on final? And each time the helicopter crew acknowledged they did. Now, you've been at airports where when you travel and you see this long line of airplanes that are lined up coming in, light after light after light. There's a possibility that when they were flying and operating this, and they were looking at what they thought was this RJ, was actually the aircraft behind it. Now, we don't know that that's the case, but one of the things that they're going to look at is this crew seemed to be very confident they knew where that other airplane was. And obviously they did not because of the impact. So what were they looking at? And when you look at how those airplanes were lined up, given all the things that visually you're challenged with at that time of night, when you're flying that type of helicopter with lights everywhere, it's possible that a mistake could have been made. So I hope it's not something as simple as that caused this. But look, the other thing the FAA is going to look at is the air traffic control system. Apparently, that center was operating with a shortage of air traffic controllers. And one of the, again, initial reports suggest that the air traffic controller that was working with this particular flight was doing the job of two people. Now, if that was the case, did that contribute? So, Rich, there's a long list of things here that those experts have to look at, and they'll be working with officials from Bombardier, the Canadian jet maker. They be working with American Airlines and doing everything they can to get every single answer, and they won't stop until they get an answer. And I mean, this team is called in other countries when there's a plane crash, as we had in South Korea, the one that hit the wall. The NTSB was invited to come over and take one of the lead roles in that investigation because they're that good at what they do.
Jay Ratliff, you're a tremendous wealth of information on this stuff. I don't know the first thing about aviation, and maybe one day I'll pick it up as a hobby, but I really do appreciate it. Let everyone know how they keep up to speed with you nowadays.
JayRatliff.com is my business website. I teach people how to trade stocks, but far more importantly, that's the site everyone goes to if they've got a problem with an airline where they're giving you issues and they're not responding. So reach out to me at jratliff.com, and as quickly as they can, I'll get back to you so that we can hold airlines accountable. And I will also add, far more importantly, if you've got a complaint against the airline, don't complain to them. Go to dot.gov, that's the Department of Transportation, dot.gov, and in the search box, type in airline complaint. Rich, a little quick form pops up that allows you to issue your complaint to the airline through the DOT, which I can tell you, working at Northwest Airlines, we hated these because it took so much time to respond. So if you want to give your complaint a little bit of credibility and you want to guarantee a response, go to dot.gov and file that complaint on a current or past issue through there and just wait and see what happens.
Outstanding. You are tremendous. Jay Ratliff, I appreciate it. Godspeed to you. And we'll probably have you back sooner rather than later with an update. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, sir.
Yes, sir. And amigos, your calls and more, plus a little bit more on the news of the day when we return. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company till midnight, some areas, 1 a.m. in others, and some stations carrying us in the later part of the overnight. Big shout out to them as well. Thank you for doing that. Keeping you up to speed on what's going on in America at night. And I want to go to the phones, 833-4-VALDEZ. I see the phone lines are lighting up. Let's go to Montana, KOFI. Check in with Frank. Frank, what's going on, my man?
I wanted to talk about Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They passed the act, this nonprofit organization, kind of a worldwide conspiracy of socialist mothers, whatever. They're going to, as early as 2026, the HALT Act is going to work together with the car manufacturers to come up with a passive impaired driving prevention technology, AI. It's going to check your eyes, your movements, your attitude, just lots of things. That they can monitor your blood pressure, you name it. And then if they decide to, pull you over to the side of the road, let's say you're in Chicago traffic and it's 8 lanes across, and the inner lanes are all truckers. First 3 lanes are all big rigs, and you can't get a little EV car in between. I mean, what's going to happen, And it's just these are little time bombs, people are just worn out. They've got to get to work or something. The traffic's all stopped up for hours. My God, it's the cars are overheating.
Look, I don't know about all of that stuff, Frank, but I do I share some of that concern, right? While everybody wants to be safe, I appreciate safety. I do. And I really do. I think that that's something I would entertain. Like I wouldn't rule out a car that had such a thing because I wouldn't want to do that. But there's always the other side. And the other side of that argument is what you're talking about. The idea that, hey, hold on a second. We can do whatever we want with your car. And I kind of lose my autonomy, right? And if the manufacturer does that and says, oh, we're doing it, it's almost like a red flag law for guns, where people are like, oh, I think that guy might do something crazy. Oh, well, let's take all his guns away until we figure it out. I think this guy might be driving drunk. Oh, let's pull him over. Let's turn his car off, or use the 70 cameras that are on board to talk to him. And, imagine just driving, you're arguing with your girlfriend. I don't know, whatever it is. And they're like, hey, how you doing? It's Officer so-and-so, or, it's the whatever, if it's New York, we're the violence interrupters, whatever the case is. And I don't like that, that kind of parting ways with my privacy. And, my car, I specifically got it because I didn't want to get the absolute newest version. A, I probably couldn't afford it. And B, because it is, it's a little bit older and it didn't have all those new bells and whistles. But it does have these scanners or these sensors that look at my eyeballs when I get in the car. And I know that because every single time I get in with sunglasses, it tells me on the onboard screen, taking your eyes off the road is dangerous. And I'm like, I'm not even in drive yet. I'm in park. So clearly, if it doesn't see my eyeball, it says that. Whenever I get in with regular glasses, it can see my eyeballs or no glasses, and it sees it just fine. So there's a lot of technology out there, and half of it, who knows? It's like these apps that we download stuff, and we're like, yeah, sure. I just want to play with this app. And lo and behold, you're signing everything away. Your private messages, other apps. It leaves your microphone on. It records you. It's really interesting. I've seen a lot of apps that I had to go and turn off the microphone. Apps that don't even use microphones. So I think you raise a good point. We don't want to sacrifice our security or our privacy for the sake of security. That would be challenging, to say the least. Frank in Evergreen, Montana. Thank you for your call, brother. I appreciate it. And I want to continue. We're going to go to Mark, who's calling us from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA, America's oldest radio station. Mark, what's going on, my man?
Hey, I listened to Wendy Bell's show tonight, and she mentioned
I love Wendy Bell.
I know, you've been on her show, on Newsmax. What I wanted to ask you, what's going on with Karen Bass? I saw when Donald Trump was out there, he wanted those people to be able to get into their properties. Well, she held some meeting. She's hiring some contractor to do something, or I'm not sure.
That, what I read, I'll tell you, what I read was that she's considering hiring an outside consultant to help rebuild the city, as opposed to using, I guess, the urban planners that work for the city to work on the reconstruction and repair of everything that's in disrepair and was damaged by the fire.
Okay, because when I do remodeling in my house, I use a contractor that I mean, is she allowed to do, like, they still own that piece of property, and like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I don't know if she's talking about doing that with private property. I know there were some schools that were damaged, so I don't know the extent of it. But rest assured, I think there's an active movement of folks in California, and if they want to call in and get some exposure, I'm happy to put them on, that are trying to get her out of office. They're trying to recall Gavin Newsom, and I think that these are good things. I think it's a good thing to change the leadership because it needs to be changed. Mark in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, thank you for your call. Shout out to everybody on KDKA. Your calls and more from Nevada, Arkansas, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
fair, balanced, and I love the way you conduct yourself with your listeners.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, we're making late night talk radio, live late night radio. Great again. Let's go to John in Reno, Nevada, streaming the show. Go for it, John.
Hey, Rich. I'm a big Donald Trump supporter, which is odd because one of my friends is Alex Sanchez, a retired Marist Salvatrucha gangbanger from L.A., who about 20 years ago started Homies Unidos with a Catholic priest. He does gang prevention, he does tattoo removal, and addiction work with communities in Pico Union. Nice. I actually prefer living in the Latino community. I grew up very Catholic, but I support Trump because it's not about Latino hate. It's about America getting too fat with too many people addicted and on disability. The homeless problem is largely people on disability that can't afford housing. We need to work on this problem before we let more people in. It's not about Latino hate. It's about fixing America's problems.
Listen, brother, you nailed it. I think you're right on. You're right on target. The homeless problem has been a big problem for a long time. Not only on disability, a lot of times they are schizophrenic, right? There's some sort of mental illness that's unaddressed, which causes them to just. This is part of the symptoms of their schizophrenia, where they just talk to themselves and walk around the streets. And that's not every homeless person. Some people it's financial, but in large part there is this underlying issue, and we have to figure out a way to make it happen, because I'm of the opinion that we really shouldn't. I know we can't fix every problem, but those that are doing it, like your friend who's got this Homies Unidos who's working with the Catholics, there's a lot of partnerships that are out there. There's a lot of people that are willing to do charitable work. Not necessarily the government, but even in some cases the government. And even when the government tries, look at what they did with California. They spent $24 billion to eradicate homelessness, which is a stupid goal to begin with because you're likely not going to eradicate it, but you can definitely improve it. And they ended up spending all that money, I think the equivalent of $160,000 per homeless person. And there's still a ton of homeless encampments all over the place. So, I mean, I don't know about you, but if I gave $160,000 to every last person that didn't have a home, I think that's enough to get a down payment going to get into a home. Anyway, John, great points. I appreciate it. Shout out to you guys in Nevada. And with a minute to go on the clock, let's go to Joe, Salem, Arkansas. Hopefully he's there this time. Joe, go right ahead.
Hey, sorry about that. I'm having battery problems. Listen, those people being questioned today, all of them, Cash, Bobby, and Tulsi, these old bags are mean-spirited questioning her. They better understand something. If you want sick people, continued disease, just keep Bobby out because he can clean up this food supply like they do in Denmark. The Denmark grocery store.
You're 100% right. We've got to clean it up. Folks, hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night, and God bless you, America. Joe, thanks for the call. I'll be back when I can. I'm Rich Valdez.